بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of Islamic Plan for Life. In the previous session, we talked about the way Islam brings justice and order through law. And now today we want to talk about Islamic governance and leadership. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala certainly wants for us happiness of dunya and akhirah. And the way He has created us with body and soul, with lots of interactions between body and soul, would also make our life in dunya and the hereafter very much connected with each other. And there is no way to secure happiness in dunya without working for your happiness in the hereafter, or to optimally work for happiness in the hereafter, unless you take care of your worldly life. Yeah. So if you tell people, you should have miserable life in dunya and just focus on akhirah, this doesn't work. We have talked about this also in the discussion about Nahj al-Balagha. Many times we had this discussion about the balance between dunya and akhirah, but not the balance in the sense that these are two separate things. Balance in the sense that these are very much interconnected. And if you want happiness, you need to have both, but in the right measure and with the right approach. So there is no way, someone thinks that Islam is a religion which is only concerned about the hereafter. And the only thing that in dunya Islam bothers about is what to do for your hereafter. Nothing about politics, nothing about, for example, economy, nothing about management, nothing about health. Just work for your akhirah. No, Islam tries to bring a comprehensive package for our happiness in dunya and akhirah. As you remember, we had this hadith, كن لدنياك كأنك تعيش أبدا وكن لآخرتك كأنك تموت غدا. With this interpretation, that it means when it comes to your dunya, take everything seriously and do things today, don't leave it for tomorrow. Do things properly. And when it comes to akhirah, also do things properly. If you live for dunya, for example, you are building a house, think that this house is going to remain forever. If you are making a car, think that this car is going to be used forever. Make things as much as possible proper. Don't say, let me do something for a few days and then after a few days we repair it or we replace it. So, when it comes to dunya, it is true that we shouldn't worry too much. We shouldn't prioritize dunya, but this doesn't mean that we should neglect about dunya. For the sake of our eternal happiness, we should take care of dunya. But we never go to extreme, of course. You know, if, for example, I put lots of efforts on having a luxurious life, or if I, save lots of money that I'm not going to use, this is not productive. But anything which is productive, anything which is efficient, anything which is constructive, anything that helps other human beings with their pursuit of virtues, happiness, then this is good and it is part of our pursuit of akhirah. So, Islam has great attention to our life in this world as well. And therefore we have lots of instructions, whether it's in our akhlaq or in our fiqh, about different aspects of our worldly life. For example, about business, about trade, we have lots of instructions. About judiciary law, we have lots of instructions. These things cannot be implemented if there is no system of governance. If people live in anarchy and there is no system, no governance, not only these things cannot be established, even the minimum order cannot be kept if there is no system. Therefore, we have in hadith from Imam Raza alayhi salam, in which he says, La budda linnas min imam. People must have imam, leader. Whether it's good or bad, it's better than anarchy. We have seen in recent years that some countries, when they got rid of their tyrants, and then there was a gap of power and there was no strong governance, many people, wished that they still had the previous situation. At least there was order. At least there was someone who was responsible. This doesn't mean that we endorse unjust system, but this means that anarchy is worse than having a bad, system. Imagine, for example, if there is a road, a busy road, people are going straight or turning right, left, U-turn, etc. Even if you have a bad police, it's better having no police. If there is a bad traffic regulation, it's better than nothing. Even if the lights don't work properly, it's better than having no traffic light. So there is a need for something. So the idea is that there has to be some kind of governance. Now, if members of society are Muslims and they want to run their society by Islam, then we can introduce a package of governance which is Islamic. And in the book it's clear, also I mentioned end of last week, this doesn't mean that wherever they are Muslims, they are calling for Muslim government. This is where there is a Muslim population, there is a Muslim society. If there is, for example, a group of Muslims and Christians, maybe they agree on having a kind of system which is religious but based on their commonalities. This is also possible. Yeah, if there are Muslims and Christians who really want to run their societies according to the will of God, their common understanding of will of God, this is also possible. If there are Muslims and Jewish and they want to run their country by their common understanding of will of God, that is also possible. It's better than saying, because we are not 100% agreeing, so it's better to have no place for God and no place for religion in our society. Unfortunately, one common mistake, and perhaps for some people is an attempt, is because in some societies there are different religious communities. They say in order to keep everyone happy, let's be secular. But this means we are missing lots of common things that we have. And to be secular should mean that we don't impose any particular religious idea on all people. But if there are many things they share, why we should deprive ourselves of those values? And why we should impose atheism on religious communities just because we have many different religious communities. So if there is a society in which people are Muslims and they want to run their society according to Islam, so they have to be a system. Part of this system is about leadership. Part of it is about law. Part of it is about management. If you have the best leader and the best law, but you don't have proper, management, this is also a problem. So, let us talk a little bit about leadership. Of course, even if we don't have Islamic governance, we still need leadership. Islam says even if few people travel together, they should choose one of them as their leader, even if it is for a few days. Because having a leader helps us a lot, saves us unnecessary, disagreements, etc. So, even if we don't have Islamic governance, there are 50 us, for example, or 500 of us, or 5,000 of us, living in a city, still we can have a leader. But for sure, if we have a state or we have a society which is run by Islam, then the leadership has higher tasks and responsibilities. Some of the requirements which are available in our literature are as follows. One, of course, major requirement is taqwa. So a leader has to be God-fearing, has to be pious. And one important aspect of it is not to do zulm to anyone, to themselves, to others, to strangers, to foreigners. No one can be pious if they do injustice even to enemies. Yeah? Or if they prioritize, their own people over other people, for example, their own family, their own tribe, their own, party, etc. So, pleasing God should be the only thing that matters to them. Doing things for the sake of God, not for the sake of fame, money, power, position, etc. Another thing which is very important is knowledge. All Muslims must seek knowledge about what they need in dunya, but also all Muslims should seek knowledge about religion. They should have deep understanding of religion. But leaders, because they are going to help people in different roles and different areas of life, they should have much deeper and more comprehensive knowledge of Islam. Because they have to guide teachers, doctors, engineers, all different people, types of people, soldiers, police, etc. So a leader must have very good knowledge, and therefore if it's going to function at its proper level, they have to be mujtahid. They have to be jurists. Maybe if we don't have any jurist, then we come down. In some discussions, for example, Sheikh Ansari rahmatullah alayhi, when he talks about faqih adil, then he says if there is no faqih adil, then udulul mu'minin, then believers who are just, who are muttaqi, maybe they are not mujtahid if we don't have mujtahid, but they can follow the instructions of mujtahideen. But the first assumption is that the leader should be mujtahid. And they should also, thank you, know how to run and how to exercise the leadership. If we have a muttaqi, pious, mujtahid, who is not familiar with the way countries are run, the way societies are run and led, it's not working. They should also be brave and determined. A leader needs to be brave because sometimes you have to make very difficult decisions. And also, they should be determined. They should also be detached from dunya, because even if there's slight attachment to dunya, little by little, when you are in power, they can grow and create problems. They should also look only for merits and give positions to the people who are qualified based on their merits. There must be no favoritism in their decisions or in their giving of positions, etc. So, based on people's choice and then dependent on people's support, we can have a kind of governance that most qualified believers would serve the interest of the state. It's a service. It's not a privilege. We don't look at leadership as a privilege. If someone even thinks of aspiring to become a leader or a marja or famous, this automatically disqualifies them. Then there's a discussion about mutual rights of leaders and people. Leaders have some roles. For playing their roles, they need support. Therefore, they have some rights over people. People also have some rights over leaders. One of the most relevant and beautiful passages that we can use for this part is this sermon of Amirul Mu'mineen, sermon 216. We had reference to this sermon in our study of Nahj al-Balagha, introduction to Nahj al-Balagha. In sermon 216, Amirul Mu'mineen refers to the mutual rights of leaders or rulers or governors and people. And Sayyid al-Radhi says this sermon was given in Saffin. Khatabaha bi-Saffin. So remember the context. This is in the days of Saffin, the battle between Amirul Mu'mineen and Muawiyah. Amirul Mu'mineen says, Amma ba'd faqad ja'alallahu li alaykum haqqan bivilayat amrikum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me some right over you, bivilayat amrikum, because I am waliyul amr, I am in charge, I am responsible for your affairs, so Allah has given me some rights over you. وَلَكُمْ عَلَيَّ مِنَ الْحَقِّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي لِي عَلَيْكُمْ. Also you have some rights over me. As I have rights over you, you have rights over me. So even at the time of war, Amirul Mu'mineen is talking about the rights of people as well, because sometimes governments tend to ignore the rights of people, and they only talk about the rights of system and the rights of government, especially at the time of war. They try to reduce freedom, etc. But Amir al-Mu'minin battle of Siffin, he's talking about these rights should be always observed. And then he says, فَالْحَقُّ أَوْسَعُ الْأَشْيَاءِ فِي التَّوَاصُفِ وَأَضْيَقُهَا فِي التَّنَاصُفِ. Haq here can mean rights. When it comes to description, are the widest things. Anyone can describe rights. But when it comes to be actually fair and observe them, it's very narrow. It's very difficult. لا يجري لأحد إلا جرى عليه ولا يجري عليه إلا جرى له. No one has any right unless he has to observe also some rights. So if I have right over you, it means that also there must be some right for you over me. It's always mutual. If the leader has some rights over people, people also have some rights. Always are mutual rights. Then therefore we say every right comes with some duties, because there are rights of other people also over you. And Amir al-Mu'minin says, وَلَوْ كَانَ لِأَحَدٍ أَنْ يَجْرِيَ لَهُ وَلَا يُجْرَى عَلَيْهِ لَكَانَ ذَلِكَ خَالِصًا لِلَّهِ. The only if there was any person that had only rights over others and no one has right over him, that would be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Amir al-Mu'minin says, وَلَكِنْ جَعَلَ حَقَّهُ عَلَى الْعِبَادِ أَنْ يُطِيعُوهُ وَجَعَلَ جَزَاءَهُمْ عَلَيْهِ. But even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, my right over you is to obey me, and then your right over me is to reward you. So Allah has undertaken also some duties on behalf of his servant. And also he multiplies the reward تَفَضُّلًا مِنْهُ, out of his favor. Then he says how these rights bring different responsibilities, and reaches this point. He says, وَأَعْظَمُ مَا افْتَرَضَ سُبْحَانَهُ مِنْ تِلْكَ الْحُقُوقِ حَقُّ الْوَالِي عَلَى الرَّعِيَّةِ وَحَقُّ الرَّعِيَّةِ عَلَى الْوَالِي. Greatest rights that Allah has decided and has made farida, necessary, obligatory, are the rights of wali, the ruler, the leader, over people, and the rights of people over ruler or leader or governor. This social and political rights at this level of nation and leader are the greatest rights. فَرِيضَةً فَرَضَهَا اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ لِكُلٍّ عَلَى كُلٍّ. This is what Allah has made necessary for all. And then he says, فَجَعَلَهَا نِظَامًا لِأُلْفَتِهِمْ وَعِزًّا لِدِّينِهِمْ. If they observe these rights, then they have order, they have a system in which there is ulfa, there is friendship, and their religion also will be strong. Izzan lidinihim. With anarchy, we cannot have a strength for our religion. And therefore, as I told you, it doesn't need to be for a nation, for a state. Even if we are few people living in a city or in a country, we should organize ourselves. We should have some kind of leadership, because otherwise we are enough to destroy ourselves. فليست تصلح الرعية إلا بصلاح الولاة ولا تصلح الولاة إلا باستقامة الرعية. Good leaders cannot function without good people, and good people cannot function without good leaders. We need both. If you have the best leader like Amirul Mu'mineen, but people don't cooperate, what can you do? And if you have best people but we don't have leadership, what can we do? So we need both. فإذا أدت الرعية إلى الوالي حقه وأدى الوالي إليها حقها. If both parties fulfill their responsibilities and their duties, I mean wali and ra'iyya means the leader and the people, then عز الحق بينهم. Haqq, truth and rights become established and strong among them. وقامت مناهج الدين, and the ways of religion can rise. وَاعْتَدَلَتْ مَعَالِمُ الْعَادْ, and justice can be established. وَجَرَتْ عَلَىٰ أَذْلَالِهَا السُّنَنِ, and then you can establish sunan, the traditions. فَصَلُحَ بِذَلِكَ الزَّمَانِ, then you would have a time which is good time. This is beautiful, that even era can be a salih. Sometimes we say righteous deeds, righteous niyyah, but we can also have a time, an era which is right. And that is when we have good leaders and good people. وَطُمِعَ فِي بَقَاءِ الدَّوْلَةِ, if this relation is established and they observe rights of each other, then we can expect that the system can continue and enemies will be dispersed. وَيَئِسَتْ مَطَامِعُ الْأَعْدَاءِ, but if things go wrong, وَإِذَا غَلَبَتِ الرَّعِيَّةُ وَالِيَهَا, if people don't listen to the leader and they control, they try to be dominant over the leader, or أَجْحَفَ الْوَالِي بِالرَّعِيَّةِ, or the leader is doing injustice, the ruler is doing injustice to people, then اختلفت هنالك الكلمة, division starts. ظهرت معالم الجور, the signs of injustice will appear. وكثر الأدغال في الدين, then lots of dishonesties, lots of hypocrisy will appear and merge in religion, and the ways of tradition and sunnah will be left, and people act according to their own appetites and whims, and rulings of religion will be cancelled, and illnesses in people will increase, spiritual illnesses. It's a very beautiful explanation of both sides. If we have right system, what happens, and if we have wrong relation, what happens. And also one of the things that Imam says is very beautiful. He says, Abrar, right people, good people will become zalil. If we don't have good system, good people will be humiliated. وَتَعِزُّ الْأَشْرَارِ, and bad people, vicious people will become aziz. Because bad rulers, whether they like it or not, they always attract bad people to themselves. People who can flatter, people can be dishonest, who can be hypocrite. And then Imam continues and he says, فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالتَّنَاصُحِ فِي ذَلِكَ وَحُسْنَ التَّعَاوُنَ عَلَيْهِ. You must have mutual nasiha. Nasiha means to want the best. People and leaders, they should want the best and they should cooperate. حُسْنَ التَّعَاوُنَ عَلَيْهِ. Because the discussion about governance is very short in the book. It's 4 pages, and I don't want to go to next discussion, so I take the opportunity to expand more on this khutbah. It's very beautiful, especially from this part. So far is very important, but this part is even more important, that how Amirul Mu'mineen says that even someone like him should allow for criticism, should allow for people sharing their thoughts with him. He says, لَيْسَ أَحَدٌ وَإِنْ اشْتَدَّ عَلَى رِضَى اللَّهِ حِرْصُهُ وَطَالَ فِي الْعَمَلِ اجْتِهَادُهُ ببالغ حقيقة ما الله سبحانه أهله من الطاعة له. No matter how someone can be really concerned about pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how much efforts he may make in action, still no one can reach the proper level of obedience. So no one can say, I have obeyed Allah enough, even if they have been very much working hard and very much concerned about this. وَلَكِنْ مِنْ وَاجِبِ حُقُوقِ اللَّهِ. But we cannot do, observe all the rights of Allah. This is one point. But one of the rights of Allah over servants that it's very necessary, and we must make sure that we don't miss this, النصيحة بمبلغ جهدهم والتعاون على إقامة الحق بينهم. At least they must do nasiha, they must wish the best and cooperate. Maybe you cannot make situation perfect, but at least you must be concerned and try to help and see who is doing something good, try to help. We cannot become indifferent. And then he says, وَلَيْسَ امْرُؤٌ. Please listen very carefully. وَلَيْسَ امْرُؤٌ. This is Amirul Mu'mineen, this is Khalifatul Muslimin, this is during Battle of Siffin, but he says, there is no one, وَإِنْ أَظُمَتْ فِي الْحَقِّ مَنْزِلَتُهُ وَتَقَدَّمَتْ فِي الدِّينِ فَزِيلَتُهُ. Even if he has a high position about haqq and has merits about religion, there is no one above the level of being helped. يَفُوغُ أَنْ يُعَانَ عَلَى مَا حَمَلَهُ اللَّهُ مِنْ حَقٍّ. So there is no one that we can say he doesn't need our help to please Allah. He doesn't need our help to fulfill his duties. Everyone needs help. Even Amirul Mu'mineen says, I need your help to be able to fulfill my duties. وَلَمْرُؤٌ وَإِنْ سَقَّرَتْهُ النُّفُوسُ وَاقْتَحَمَتْهُ الْعُيُونُ بِدُونَ أَنْ يُعِينَ عَلَى ذَلِكَ or يُعَانَ. And there is no one, even people that maybe others underestimate. Yeah? There is no one unless he can help. So even the lowest member of society can help and be helped. So this is something that brings all members of our community and our society together, from the top to the bottom. All should offer, should contribute and should be happy for receiving suggestions and comments and ideas. This doesn't mean that people should be careless about no, it should be nasiha. It's out of love, out of sincerity, but everyone should be happy to receive this, and everyone should ask. Then Sayyid Razi says, one person from companion of Amirul Mu'mineen started talking. He had a long talk, and he praised Amirul Mu'mineen a lot. And he said that we are obedient to you. Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam seems that he didn't like this, because it was too much of praise and it may be a kind of flattering or whatever. And Amirul Mu'mineen is very careful not to develop any negative sense of pride. So he says first about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's right, etc. And then he says, وَإِنَّ مِنْ أَسْخَفِ حَالَاتِ الْوُلَاةِ عِنْدَ صَالِحِ النَّاسِ أَنْ يُظَنَّ بِهِمْ حُبُّ الْفَخْرِ. One of the worst conditions for leaders in the eyes of righteous people is when these leaders are thought that they love pride. If a leader develops the least amount of love for being superior, being praised, being above others, this is very bad. وَيُوذَعْ أَمْرُهُمْ عَلَى الْكِبْرِ. If righteous people think that they are becoming arrogant, this is one of the lowest things that can happen. And Amir al-Mu'minin says, I don't want to be like that, and I don't want to be developing any arrogance or be thought that I am arrogant person. And he says, قد كرهت أن يكون الجال في ظنكم أني أحب الإطراء واستماع الثناء. Amir says, I actually disliked that comes to your mind that I love to be praised. ولست بحمد الله كذلك. Alhamdulillah, I am not such a person that I want to be praised and I want to be proud and arrogant. And then he continues, and I maybe say just one sentence. He says, لا تكلموني بما تكلم به الجبابرة. Don't talk to me in the way that people talk to tyrants. The way people talk to, for example, I don't know, Fir'aun, Namrud, or Muawiyah, don't talk to me like that. I am a servant of Allah. وَلَا تَتَحَفَّظُوا مِنِّي بِمَا يَتَحَفَّظُ بِهِ عِنْدَ أَهْلِ الْبَادِرَةِ. When you talk to me or deal with me, don't be worried in the way that people are worried about those leaders who get angry and upset, and they make one decision and destroy them. Amir said, don't think in this way about me. Be relaxed when you are dealing with me. And then he says, وَلَا تَظُنُّوا بِي اسْتِسْقَالًا فِي حَقٍّ قِيلَ لِي. Don't think that if something right is mentioned to me, something true is mentioned to me, I would have istithqal. I would feel, it's burden and it's difficult for me. I am thirsty for understanding what is haqq and acting upon that. Inshallah, you can study the whole sermon 216. It's not too big, just more than half of it maybe we managed to quickly cover. So the rest you can inshallah study. So our study of this part finished, alhamdulillah, and inshallah the next discussion is longer, which is about Islamic idea about economy, some of the major issues that Islam asks us to consider. Economy as a science, of course, is something that we can always look for the best methods, the best ways based on human experience, etc. But there are principles and there are rules that we learn from Islam, so that we put the rails and the tracks properly, and we don't go to wrong directions. We don't, just use economy for power or for, worldly comfort, etc. So, inshallah, bi'iznillah, in the next session, we'll talk about how Islam brings welfare and Islamic understanding of economy, and then, inshallah, this unit also will finish. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.